sure that we're good to go and that people are jumping in. Hello all newcomers and welcome back my fellow Aeternians. As always, it is me, Emperor AP, and today I want to thank you so much for being with us once again to continue talking about another topic in micronationalism. People create their own countries all the time. This is something that has been expanding and expanding every single year that's going on probably since like the 90s or the early 2000s. Of course, we've had big spikes since probably like 2010, 2015 going onward, where people were getting more and more into the internet and being able to find a growing niche of people connected to micronationalism. Renewed Republic of Viston said, "Whoa, I didn't expect you to start a live stream." Hey, I appreciate it, Viston. It's good to see you. Yes, I actually I posted in our Discord that I was going to start a live stream in about an hour ago, maybe a little bit more. I might have been a bit behind, but I'd eat dinner, so I wanted to give everybody a little bit of prep time. If you don't know about our live streams, you should check out our Discord because I will try to announce them at least a little bit early most of the time. Also, I appreciate you guys liking. Jumping in and liking the video helps to spread it out, as you already know. But yeah, so people have been pursuing micronationalism more and more, especially as the internet has started to take off, especially as social media has gotten more popular, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all of those things have helped to empower small niche communities like micronations to be able to get out there and reach a larger audience and explain themselves. Aeternia says hello, and Renewed Republic of Viston says I got a new flag and new anthem. Congrats, guys. I'm glad that you're doing that. Also, please remember to like the video if you're just jumping in. The thing that I really wanted to focus on in that history of micronationalism today is something we've talked about for a while, and that's that there's kind of two competing theories on what a micronation should be, and most micronations fall into one of these camps, whether they realize it or not, and that is realist versus fantasy. If you haven't checked that out, you should check out our video that describes realist versus fantasy, but since I did that video a couple years back, I have wanted to make updates ever since because there's so much that I've learned about the complexities of what makes something realist versus fantasy and why it is that people identify one way or the other, though they may have traits that align. Somewhere in between. So all of these people are coming together, creating these new micronations, butting heads with each other on ideologically what they should be. And of course, you're going to have some conflict there. So I wanted to talk about one particular instance of that today, which is micronations and money. Essentially, people who are coming into the niche community of micronationalists who already have a lot of money and resources at their disposal, and creating micronations. There are some people recently who have started speaking out about that, some nations who have really started to discuss that. I have talked about it in live streams previously on the channel and my concerns about what that could mean at some point for the micronational community, but now we're starting to have more examples of it. And I do want to address that. I feel like it's an important thing for us to consider as micronationalists because it goes back to that realist versus fantasy debate, and it ultimately is something that we have to make a decision on as individuals as far as how we are going to react to those situations and how we are going to be able to address what is okay behavior and what is not okay behavior in the micronational community moving forward. There needs to be some kind of consensus on this. Ooh, Vistern said, hello, Aeternia. Galania said on Monday, the first Galani landmark was made. Hey, congratulations. Aeternia said they have a lot of money. I'm kind of jumping around here in the comments, but it's only because I want to stay on track with this topic. That is, recently there has been a micronation named Slowjamastan that has become pretty well known pretty quickly, specifically because it is run by somebody who is a locally well-known radio host in the, I think it's somewhere in California, or in, no, I'm almost certain it's in California. Somewhere in California, there is a radio host who decided to start their own micronation. The way that they went about this was for a while just kind of posting, I think, on Instagram and Twitter and showing off pretty much the radio station that they worked in as the, headquarters for their nation and sort of showing offices and things like that. They make it look very professional. I think the thing that caught a lot of people off guard is that this person then next went and bought a property, bought I forget how many acres out in the desert in California, and the way that they pitched this is essentially to be able to have a place for people to come and gather for their nation. But it seems like the primary purpose for that is going to be for events, for things that are like, almost like a theme park. And I'll come back to that in a second. So the reason that people have been concerned and a lot of nations have spoken out is because in their mind, they feel like a lot of what Slowjamastan posts is very silly. Of course, the name Slowjamastan, slow jams connected to radio, connected to the idea of music. And the founder himself, I'm sure, would tell you that he doesn't take himself overly serious, especially when acting as the Sultan of Slowjamastan. It seems very much like a character. It seems like a very much an exaggerated part of his personality. And this, I think, touches on the larger conflict between realist versus fantasy micronations. It seems as though the way that the leader of Slowjamastan views Slowjamastan is as a fun project. Whereas there are people in the micronational community, I think particularly the ones who have been speaking out, who are particularly interested in a realist version of micronationalism, wherein micronations are designed to be nations which host populations and support citizens and communities. So these are really like quality of life struggles for some people and like silly fun weekend hobbies for others. And so you can imagine that creates like an insane amount of headbutting. And that's exactly what we're seeing, is we're seeing people who are saying, well, Slowjamastan doesn't take themselves seriously, or Slowjamastan comes in here and like spends all this money and then becomes super popular in micronationalism, whereas there are other people who are like grinding really hard and not seeing the same results because they don't have the same ability to have money to get out there. And this debate kind of caught me because I've been following it on Twitter for a little bit. Particularly, there's a nation, Beer to Will. They I still want to learn more about them because there are a number of nations who claim Beer to Will as their territory, but do not actually reside there. I think the people who run the Twitter account for Beer to Will are I think the closest I've seen. Like I've looked up, and I think they reside within one of the neighboring countries to Beer to Will. So regardless, I would like to bring up that I think this debate and going back and forth between how micronations should be recognized, how the media should interpret micronationalism, and all of that ultimately goes back to what a micronation's purpose is to begin with. So when you're a micronation who is designed to specifically host a population and run things with respect to taking care of people, there could certainly, I could see, be a great bit of concern with somebody calling themselves the same thing that you call yourself and advertise yourself as, but they are being really silly and goofy and, are not supporting that idea seriously. And I think that um, there are exceptions to this, which I think are very interesting, and I will bring up different uh, different examples. So, for example, Kevin Ball of Molossia never has gotten flack. I don't think I haven't seen any about uh, being a very fantastic micronation, a micronation which identifies themselves as independent. Sends letters to the United States saying, we've declared our independence. We, are sending you our taxes as a form of foreign aid, and even receive, like Christmas cards from the president of the United States. The thing that I think is quite interesting about that though is that Kevin Baugh is someone who like founded a lot of what we consider modern micronationalism, especially because he was one of the first ones to be really prominent on the internet, and I think kind of a circle of people started to develop and expand in this niche online, specifically around the actions that he was taking in developing his nation. And so his viewpoint, his reason for creating his micronation of Molossia happened over a very long period of time, over his entire life. And it was a very slow process, and it adopted the things that he had independently. You know, his own home is used as the territory for Molossia. His things that he has designed and built himself, for the most part, are the tourist attractions there, and he acts very in character as well when greeting people and when doing some of the tours that Molossia frequents. The thing that is, or that Molossia hosts frequently, the thing that becomes certainly a larger concern there is then when you look at places like Slowjamastan, which seem to be doing the same thing in spirit. You know, hey, we have this land. Hey, we have a quirky, host who is trying to present this fun, active community as a hobby, as a thing that is meant to be not taken too seriously. But you will notice that the differences clearly tend to focus around money and around the ability to make progress based on income. Whereas Kevin Baugh has never really flaunted wealth or shown too many signs of using money as a way to advance his micronation, he has earned, I think, a lot of the community's respect. And as one of the sort of primary developers of it, have, of course, a lot of people's mindsets around micronationalism have stemmed from there. But then, I think as a result of that, potentially Slowjamastan was a direct connection to Molossia in the sense that the leader of Slowjamastan saw somebody like Molossia or West Arctica or any other country that stems from that main group where Molossia was connected to West Arctica by like trade and by their like initial connections through the internet and so on and so forth. I think that somebody may see that era of micronationalism and that time, which was primarily, that was the basic definition of what a micronation was for most people. Those were their examples. That is the idea with which birthed Slowjamastan. I think it is, kind of a way to increase PR for his radio station and for the things that he does privately, but I think it also allows him a fun opportunity to be a character and to, invent and be creative. The thing that I think is the differentiating factor is the money. Of course, it seems as though the leader of Slowjamastan has thrown quite a bit of money into making sure that the PR and the press around that is very well established, as well as things that he can do to sort of escalate that appearance, purchasing more land, doing things like that. And I think people who are disappointed in that shouldn't be, because it's something that stems kind of naturally from that initial definition, that initial buy-in era, I should say, of micronationalism. Although I would expand upon it and say that what buy-in micronationalism has given us is the ability to see micronationalism in other lights as well. The Empire of Aeternia certainly is a product of buy-in micronationalism, but I would say that we have expanded upon that to emphasize the sincere care of a population of people and wanting to ensure that we can develop a community that lasts for many, many generations after its founding. So the changes that have become in micronationalism and the different people who have adopted a more serious, a more realist approach to micronationalism are new on the block. They should not assume that micronationalism is going to conform to the way that they see micronationalism just because it's how they have started it, how they're moving about it. Although I will say that um, I will say that um, the connection to um, the connection to micronationalism as far as a basis for a hobby and an entertainment sort of connection becomes concerning in some way because of that feeling of potential exploitation. And I think, again, that's kind of what other nations are bringing up. But I would add that if that's, a potentially negative take or a negative way of utilizing Baoian micronationalism for what it is, I would say that adopting a realist perspective with large scale financing could be an even more dangerous concept, right? The idea that what Slowjamastan is doing is certainly, taking advantage of the niche following that micronationalism has built, and the people like Kevin Ball have developed, and others who have been working at it for years and have kind of shown up and made this big hurrah by throwing a lot of money around. But I would say that if that person, if the leader of Slowjamastan decides to say, hey, I'm going to build a theme park, hey, I'm going to promote my radio station, hey, I may do some charitable work, and that's it, that's what Slowjamastan is, that's all right. Like, that's not the scariest thing in the world. What's significantly more concerning is if somebody, if Slowjamastan or if anyone else decided to come in as a wealthy person and say, no, 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 I'm going to seriously like go and build a thing out away from everybody else, declare my own sovereignty, work toward that goal, achieve that goal, and then use it to impose upon a certain group of people, whatever it is that my personal interests are. And I think that becomes a significantly more worrying concept. That micronationalism, for all of its hurdles and for all of its difficulties, has that as a proving ground a lot of the time. The likelihood that a micronation survives past a year or two is very slim, but it's for good reason. Not every idea for a micronation is going to be a hit right out of the park. Not every idea for a micronation is going to get a large scale following or is going to be able to keep significant traction under itself due to the needs of the founders' lives, due to a lack of funding or something else that would prevent them from continuing to move without delay. Even without delay, an average person will have a long time to take and develop their micronation into something that is recognizable and that is consistent and that has a large group of support behind it. However, when someone with a lot of money and power and resources at their disposal comes in and develops that and develops a micronation, they can pay their way through all of those hurdles. They can hire people who can routinely publish and post about it. They can, set up specific stunts or specific media attracting events to make sure that their ideas become well known and that the thing that they're starting is established well from the start. And then from there, they are able to kind of continually grow and expand. I think the opposition with Beer to Will stated it pretty well, um, just in the idea that they say, they came in with a lot of money, and um, they came in with a lot of money, and they are going to use that to exploit the micronational community to make a lot of money. That I was trying to remember exactly the way that they phrased it. You'll have to check out the tweets for yourself. But they're basically saying, if somebody comes in with a lot of money, they can leverage that to make a lot more money off of this niche community. And I do agree with that point to a good extent. I think that's a dangerous thing in the community. I think it's something that we should be very, very wary of. But I also think that it's not as bad as somebody jumping in on the other side and saying, well, no, I'm going to keep pushing past that, and I'm actually going to develop something that is um, like an oligarchy or a dictatorship, specifically around just the wealthiest elite. If Jeff Bezos decided to start a micronation, he was serious about it. He was a realist, and he really wanted to, like Elon Musk with Mars or something. If Elon Musk, Mars is a whole different thing because there's a lot of resource and time and effort it takes to establish something on Mars. But let's say, for example, he was able to do something out in the ocean where Elon Musk decides he's going to build a $10 billion platform out in the middle of the ocean and have people live there against any other government to be completely independent. It would be hard for anybody to stop Elon Musk. There may be some regulation that he has to blow through, but I think it would get done pretty quick. And on top of that, I think it would not be difficult at all for him to be able to surround himself with enough legal counsel to make sure that that sovereignty and that distance is maintained from other nations. So that would give somebody who already has a lot of wealth and privilege the ability to kind of uh, skirt past anything that may be brought up as a concern for their ideas. Like I said earlier, the proving ground of micronationalism is that first few years. If you are able to build a consistent following, if you are able to define something that is, valuable about your nation, then that shows some promise. That shows, hey, some people want to continue this and make it consistent and make it something that is achieved one day. You just have to keep growing it from there. Iron, it's good to see you. Also, Aristory, it's good to see you. Grand Pharaoh, it's good to see you. I'm glad to see everybody jumping in the comments. I haven't been able to react to them because I've been trying to get these thoughts out. I want to make sure I explain it concisely during the video, but I just feel like it's a problem, right? That if you are creating a nation and you're considering it a realist country, and you are a rich and powerful person coming in, this community can easily be swallowed up by that. And I think that's something that's very important to remember, is that for us individually as leaders, for us as members of this community, supporting a goal and hoping to have that realized one day, for people who are trying to fight for, what they consider specific freedoms that they deserve, or whether they consider, a quality of life that they are striving for, that should be something that is worth protecting, and that is something that should be worth a careful inspection by our community to make sure that we're supporting the right individuals. It's still hard, you shouldn't not support somebody just because they're wealthy. Wealthy people can have very good ideas and can make a lot of helpful progress with the resources that they have. But we shouldn't just jump behind something or bandwagon behind something because they have the money to push through obstacles. The one of the so there's multiple things. Aristoria says AP as a child in the space, but no, I'm actually not. In my house, I'm in someone else's. And they have children, but yes, I am. I'm actively in a different location than we're used to. I'm normally in the apartment, but Aristoria says Aristoria was a dictatorship in its first days. That's not a problem. I wasn't making a comment about like a specific type of government style or a specific ruling style, although we have talked about that in the past. This is more to say that, somebody who has unlimited power to start a nation would be a scary person to be ruled by. If your nation isn't developed over time and it doesn't have, fine tuning that has been built into it, it's like building a rocket and not testing it and just firing it off for the first time as a test demo with people in it. Like, it's not a good idea. It's never going to work well. And I think that's the thing that we're trying to focus on. Galani asked, is Slowjamastan expansionist? I don't know much about Slowjamastan, and that's why I'm treading really lightly here, because I cannot say, this or that about Slowjamastan. I can say what I've seen on Twitter, I can say what I've seen from their social media, and I can say what I have heard their interests are. It seems as though Slowjamastan wants to use their identity as a micronation to be able to promote the things that the founder is doing. Um, with their radio station, as well to be able to essentially make it into a local business where they can have the land that they're using be partnering with local businesses, potentially other micronations, and trying to make that into kind of a theme park, a place that is a tourist attraction in the area. That's how, especially the local news coverage around them has covered it. As this is going to be a tourist attraction. It's going to bring people to this area that generally has a lower population to bring them some tourist dollars. But I think that in and of itself, for people who are really supporting micronationalism, to see communities of people uplifted economically, and who want to see people's freedoms be achieved and established more directly, may be disheartened by that. And so that's what I would say, is that it's a problem or not based on your perception of micronationalism. And everybody has a different view of it. It's not just black and white. There are people in kind of a sliding scale on this opinion. But it is something that is worth talking about. Even if you believe micronations can be just 100% fantasy things, even if you believe that they should just be hobbies that are developed for people, then it probably doesn't matter a ton to you. But I would still say be on the lookout for people who are attempting to exploit the community. I'm not saying Slowjamastan is attempting to exploit the community at all. It could be something that ends up very beneficial for the local area that they're in. But it's important for us to continue to observe those things and to be very skeptical when we do see somebody who comes in to a community very quickly, uses a lot of money to establish themselves very quickly, and then cashes out on that. So we'll have to see if that third act comes in, if they end up cashing out on that. Um, a lot of people see micronationalism as a way to create a community and give back to that community. And so we will have to see how places like Slowjamastan and other wealthy people who come into micronationalism, because more than likely, inevitably, it's going to continue to happen, um, whether or not those people are truly invested in the community and care about the community, or whether they're just doing this to see their personal goals realized, regardless of its effects on the community or on the perception in the world of micronationalism or whatsoever. Because, like I said, this is things that people have crafted for years and years and years. Obviously, myself alone, the Empire of Aeternia has existed for 5.5 years. We've been on YouTube now for 3.5 years. And since that, about 3.5 years ago, Mark, almost every day of my life has been like, in some way or another, thinking about trying to develop something with Aeternia and to help continue the growth of micronationalism as well. And so, that being the case, it's certainly a a concern for me, not about Slowjamastan in particular, but about what Slowjamastan represents, that's just starting to become like a click and a realization in a lot of people's minds, which is the thing that micronationalism is pursuing, at least in part, is the idea that an individual has the right to self-sovereignty, and the not the right to self-sovereignty, the right to choose their governance. And that's something that, again, is connected to the Montevideo Convention, where a lot of micronations pull their claims for why they should be independent. But that idea is something that's important. Is, if these things have to be really carefully crafted so that you don't seem like somebody who's a sovereign citizen or whatever, somebody who's like, I don't care about any government, I'm just going to do my own thing, which is bad, you then have to take that into account, with that these are communities of people who are trying to over years craft something that can be a successful model for their development economically, politically, socially. This is something that has to work for people to live their lives in, to raise their children in, to have that development established, and also one which aims to get other countries to recognize that sovereignty and that independence. That's something that's a monumental task. That's more than a political campaign. That's more than some one-off activism approach. This is something that is meant to be designed to be generational, if taken literally, if taken in a realist view. That being the case, not everybody has that view. That's not always going to be the interest of some people. And I think even for those that it is, people can be very easily distracted by somebody who's able to clear past obstacles really quickly. And money is great at that. If you're somebody who watches a lot of like vlogs or a lot of, gaming live streamers or something like that, like Twitch streamers, there are companies who have paid Twitch streamers, essentially people who they will promote and elevate and make famous streaming, who are employees of theirs. That the reason that they've become popular, they may eventually develop a fan base that likes what they do and how they work, but they will explode in popularity over people who have been doing it for years and years, because they have the money and resources to inflate their ability to connect to an audience and to find people who will watch what they do. So they can just keep throwing money at their problems until they end up landing something that works. And they will continue to tweak it and continue to fuel it until that happens. And a lot of people have been upset with the gaming community and with the streaming community because of those kinds of instances where people will find out, hey, my favorite streamer is actually like somebody who's paid by a company. It's not somebody that I necessarily have adapted the same type of connection that I thought I had with. And so that's a big question philosophically on their community, whether it is necessary or important for somebody to be a genuine person in the development of their brand, or whether it is okay to just have entertaining content. Now that's a big approach into micronationalism, where is it important for somebody to be actually trying to develop a community and to give back to the benefits and purposes of micronationalism, or is it okay for it to simply be a hobby? Is it okay for it to simply be an advertising model or a business model? If somebody says, for example, this is a great example. There was one a few years ago. Um, Something like Brewistan or something like that, or Beeristan or something. There was a nation in Australia whose entire purpose, and I believe it comes from Atlanteum and from the Principality of Hutt River, who are both Australian micronations. But somebody branched off of them, which was basically a beer company trying to sell beer by advertising themselves as their own country, saying, hey, we're our own country. This is our brand that makes us a unique type of beer. Buy our beer because isn't micronational beer cool? So that first plays off the interest of people who like micronations, but it also gives a unique approach to what would otherwise be them trying to figure out some other way to separate themselves from beer companies. So that's maybe effective, but is that morally okay to do in our community? Is the question that we're trying to build up to and figure out. It's a hard one. It's one that isn't going to be solved right away. And there are going to be plenty of instances, as we've already seen there are a few, of people coming into the community with that design in mind. Now, whether those people end up making a true impact on the community, whether those people end up doing something positive for the community at the end of all of it, if those people end up being long-term contributing members of those communities, is all up in the air and is all dependent on the individual circumstances that make that country. But at the same time, we as a community, the people who are going to stay here for generations and who are going to continue to develop this and who are going to be pursuing their national identity fervently, it's important for us to be observant of that and to think about that, before we really do start promoting and hyping and showing off these other nations. It it might be wise for us to really like try and understand what it is that that nation is doing and how that might appear to um, everyone else. I think one of the things that was interesting was, tonight I got an email for the the Microcon, uh, updates, essentially the newsletter for what's going on with Microcon 2020. And I'm excited to go to Microcon. One of the things that made me feel a little bit strange though was that they said like, hey, we're gonna have like a number of different nations who are coming in. There's like these many nations so far, and like this person and this person's coming. But one of the things that they did do was like, and we're gonna have media sweetheart Slowjamastan there, and I feel like the way that they set it up was as like a really big pitch for everybody. Like, hey, you guys love Slowjamastan, right? Like, come to Microcon. And I don't know. I feel like the suddenness with which Slowjamastan has blown up is certainly great for them, but it does make me feel wary. At least because of the fact that it is from specifically a financial standpoint that was based. If it was, a couple kids in their backyard, like all of a sudden blew up and became super famous for their nation, that'd be awesome. But it's a company that started it. It is a person, whether they owned that company or not, whether the Sultan of Slowjamastan owns the radio company that started and promoted at least the development of Slowjamastan, or whether this was an individual employee of that radio station who just happened to go out on a limb and start developing this nation and putting their own money to it, makes a difference. But it's certainly still something to like think about and to understand the different um, uh, what your opinion on the morality of it is. I think, of course, this clears a lot of hurdles for them, and it is very beneficial. Micronations spend a lot of time trying to develop businesses. Those are one of the biggest hurdles that it takes to develop something that is sincerely attempting to be a nation, something that is really trying to uh, benefit a community and increase their quality of life over what it has been. The difficulty that I have seen in all of that is that we really don't get an opportunity to see it super often. And having Slowjamastan be the other way around, where it already has this corporate backing that then gives it, strength to some extent to be able to have a consistent pool of funding to use for their development becomes an interesting scenario because they certainly have um, a higher immediate progress than any other nation who doesn't have that corporate backing. So there's the potential for them to do a lot, but at the same time, what their goals and motivations are may make that worrisome for other people in the community. So again, it's kind of I'm leaving this up to you guys, and I really want to know what you think about it because for me, it's so wild. I have been in micronationalism for, like I said, 5.5 years officially as the leader of Aeternia, and then I have, casually like seen micronationalism develop for probably a few years before that. And so knowing that I had seen, these like little instant pop-ups for a second of like, the like brewing nation or whatever it's called. Um, let's see. I want to make sure that I'm reading everybody's comments. Ari jumped in. Hey Ari, how are you? It's good to see you. Uh, Republic of Raka says, is Slowjamastan bad? That's what we're trying to kind of figure out in this stream, and I don't think there's really an answer that we can determine in this stream. Is Slowjamastan bad is a complex question. I don't think inherently. They're silly a little bit, and they are certainly using corporate money to advance themselves or at very least somebody who is quite wealthy and successful on their own, like backing to be able to elevate themselves. But instead of as opposed to the backing of like a community, um, but it's still a big question. It's still a big what if. There are certainly red flags, as we've mentioned. That corporate backing, or at least that large financial backing initially, and then on top of that, the fast pace with which that has fueled their development. Um, it sets us up for a position where Slowjamastan could very well become the standard, at least for the next decade, view of what micronationalism is. If they end up getting a lot of media attention and they continue to do that and advance that, they could very well eclipse a lot of other micronations simply in the public view. That then makes it to where they are the baseline for when people first encounter micronationalism as to what they think it is. So if you have a micronation that is very, very nonchalant, very, corporate structured, very, um, um, very external in their operation of their micronation, meaning that they are very hands off. They are, creating this brand, they are marketing, they are selling items, but they aren't really trying to develop a community. That makes a difference with what it is that other micronations are able to do when they start to claim the same title. Because if that thing is a micronation, if having, a just the label of micronation makes something a micronation, then when you start to say, hey, this is my micronation, it's a community of people, we've raised a small amount of funding together and are trying to move forward with this thing, you may find a lot of confusion or potentially some backlash because it's like, oh, well, why are you trying to design your nation like that? Why don't you just do this other thing like everybody else does? And so there's certainly some benefits to that. Of course, you can define yourself separate from the pack, but anytime the view of what a micronation is changes, it affects a certain group of people who are developing their micronation in a different way. For example, if a democratic micronation became really, really popular, then it would be harder to justify being a monarchist micronation, or vice versa. Um, so we have to remember the diversity of micronationalism, and we have to keep that in our hearts as understanding that everybody's pushing toward their own goals, but they're also all pushing toward the the overall belief that people should be able to build communities and to have those communities become more and more independent as they are able to prove themselves uh, capable of that. Um, and again, that's the scary part of having somebody or a group with a lot of money come in and just push through all these hurdles, is that it doesn't, those hurdles no longer act as proving grounds. They no longer show that the community is necessarily valuable or more beneficial. If a group of people over years and years and years develop a community just out of their own passion for it and start creating businesses that make money to support that passion, that directly connect to the capability of those people and the value that the community brings to them, then there is a direct connection between how successful they are and how valuable they are to the people that they represent. But if something is started um, specifically as a branding tactic, or specifically as something to advance the capital of a pre-existing corporation, it could become that that is ultimately what dominates, and that is ultimately what people view. So be very careful as you continue to design your micronations, as you continue to watch other nations develop. See what that means for people, and talk about why it is that you develop a micronation. What are important values that micronations should have? Why should someone create a micronation? And you know, should there be um, should there be more definitions that people create for how to understand different aspects of micronationalism? Again, I've been very hesitant to try and define too much besides realist versus fantasy on this channel. That's because there's so much diversity in the community, and if you try to, pin a label on somebody, it's going to be very, very hard to justify that because communities can be such diverse places. Um, Republic of Rex, good to see you. Renowned Republic of this things, good to see you. Uh, Ooh, Aristoria said, can our two nations start an economic alliance? Email me at eternianempire@gmail.com or hit me up on Discord and personally like DM me. I would love to start an economic alliance. I want to talk to you about that, but I can't finalize anything until we would like talk about terms and figure out what's practical for you all to do, what's practical for us to do right now because we are in the middle of this like land purchase. There's a lot to go on with that. Also, we have 6 viewers, 4 likes. Thank you guys so much. If you could like the video, it would help a lot to keep spreading it out. We have the Sardinian Empire with us. It's good to see you guys. And yeah, that's, I hope that I can get this out on Twitter. If you guys are on Twitter, make sure you share it with, people like Slowjamastan, people like, Beer to Will. I want to try to understand better what these nations are and how their different views of micronationalism are seen. One thing that would be interesting to me is if this is a misunderstanding. It could very well be that Slowjamastan and Beer to Will have many of the same views on things, but we don't know because there is this point of contention. And so I feel like I'm curious to know if it is a misunderstanding directly between these two nations, or if it is something that is a more fundamental sign of a larger issue or a larger philosophical question that's yet to be really answered thoroughly in micronationalism. And I feel like for us, that's something that I've been thinking about for a long time. With Aeternia, now we are, trying to make this big land purchase. I'm spending all of my, personal bank account, like just trying to make that happen. And so with all of the people who have been supporting us over the years and who have gotten us to a place where we can even consider doing that, it is it is incredibly, incredibly confusing, I guess, to see other nations that develop in ways that don't necessarily reflect that. The people who have supported us and who've given to us have gotten some value out of what they do. Whether it is that they are supporting us as citizens and enjoy the perks of being a citizen, as opposed to just someone who watches the streams, or if they actually purchase an item from us that we make that is handmade by Aeternians, not just something that buy online and then resell, or put your image of your flag or your nation's name or whatever and then sell it like a drop shipping sort of thing. We are really sincerely trying to develop everything here for that value of our community to be defined. So as we continue to grow, I hope that's a realistic measure of what benefits we offer to our people. And for nations who don't adhere to that same kind of development track, you have to come up with entirely different standards of measure. You have to come up with whole new metrics to rank how reasonable it is for a micronation to develop like this, how morally, right or wrong, what some of the developments that they take are. Also, I feel like the actions that they're going to go about are going to be something that's less predictable, because if you are seeing somebody who is struggling with like a grassroots kind of political campaign to slowly track their way up in progress, you can kind of make some estimations about what they're going to be doing next, how they're going to be trying to promote themselves or trying to push forward their agenda. But a corporate structure that's already pre-existing is something that kind of takes on a life of its own, because is that nation going to be just a kind of an offshoot of the original branding of that corporation, kind of like the beer nation thing, or are they going to be something that's a complete departure from the connection to their original corporate start, like it seems like Slowjamastan may end up being. And so what does that mean for micronationalism? What does that mean for their pace of development? And how do we predict how successful or how potentially concerning their developments are? Let's continue to read. Aristotle says, hello, sir. Oh, goodness. He's memeing out here. Ooh, hold up. Let's see. So, Viston says, let me think. And then they said, in conclusion, Slowjamastan is not bad, probably. Yeah, I think that's a decent summary. I would say it depends on what you mean by bad. And I think that's a hard take because I think, in my opinion, if I understand Slowjamastan's founding correctly, starting from having a certain amount of money and just dumping it into overcoming hurdles to obtain nationhood is concerning, and I think maybe ethically questionable, potentially a little bit morally wrong, those being very, very similar phrases, um, just because it doesn't go through that original proving ground. You know what I mean? It would be like if you watch somebody play through like all of Dark Souls, or what is it, whatever the new one is, Elden Ring, something like that. If you watch somebody play through a Souls type game, and they grind through every level, they like level up, they get all the things that they need to be able to defeat a boss, and then they go through the entire game and they beat it. You can tell that there's like a certain amount of expertise that that person has to have just from simply proving that they can pass every stage of the game from scratch. But if you saw somebody come into someone's house and sit down to their already near completed game and then just fight the final boss for them, maybe that person is skilled, maybe they played through the game before, but maybe not. It could just be that they had the right resources and the right ability to pull that off at that one point. So kind of having different race lengths, so to speak, having different proving grounds is certainly very concerning. I don't think that makes anyone inherently good or bad, but I think how they use that privilege can really, really help or hurt the community. It's giving that person a lot of power and a lot of ability to influence things. And so the only way to moderate that or to limit that ability is to become skeptical and is to say, I don't think I'm going to branch my support until I see something that specifically triggers that um, value connection to me. That really shows that this is making a big, big difference in individuals' lives and that this is enhancing their quality of life. Um, I feel like uh, for a lot of nations, they have kind of seen Slowjamastan connect to media outlets and do different things, and then have kind of just given them a seat, at the table, and have kind of just been like, here you go, like this is you've developed now, you've succeeded, you've checked all the boxes. Thank you for developing in the last 6 months or whatever. Um, and I think it's important to be skeptical about that. I think even if Slowjamastan has the best intentions, even if everything works well for them, and I hope it does, and I hope they choose to do the right things, I think that we should still, as a community, have more ways to communicate about this and to create uh, a baseline understanding of how we think nations should develop and why we think nations should develop, so that we can better interpret how to view these groups that emerge very, very quickly with a lot of money, and just kind of throw it at whatever they need to get what they need done. Um, I certainly am curious to see what everybody thinks about it. Once again, I am going to share this, I think, on Twitter, kind of let people stew over it, kind of figure out how to approach the topic, because I want to make more videos about this. Certainly, when we go to Microcon, I want to hopefully meet the leader of Slowjamastan and kind of learn more about what they're doing. But I just I don't know. I have to stay skeptical, I suppose, for now. I want to hear more from the side of Beer to Will and what they think, how they've developed, what their reasoning behind their concerns about Slowjamastan is, how much they've looked into Slowjamastan, and what the evidence that they've built up is. Um, Micronationalism is a confusing uh, place. It's a confusing community with a lot of people who have very different ideas about what should be happening, how it should be happening, and we're all pushing toward the same goal. So when you see somebody starting to really do something, especially very quickly, it makes you wonder whether or not they're going to add to everybody's ability to get to that goal, or whether they are going to potentially backtrack it by a lot. So I hope everybody has a good night. I hope everything continues to work out for everybody's nations and continue that development successfully. I know for myself, I'm excited about the future. I'm excited about Aeternia's ability to purchase land and to have everything start to move forward in a way that allows us to show that benefit for some of our citizens. A lot of it has been recently through Discord, through online means, through showing thanks through these videos, but we haven't had too many opportunities to really show the everyday lives of citizens, to be able to connect to that, to be able to improve that from a base level. So we're expanding in what we can do and how we can do it. Like I've said in the last few videos, if you guys do want to keep up with our land purchase and keep up with everything we've been doing, please make sure to check out our Ko-Fi page. It's https://ko-fi.com/Aeternia. I can probably post a link in the description for you guys if you want to check that out. We have commissions for stuff like getting your name on our booth at Microcon, getting your nation's flag on our booth at Microcon, being in the thank you slide for our speech at Microcon. These are all things that we're hoping to push forward with. Hey, Stephen from Dracul jumped in. Hello, how are you, Stephen? I hope you're doing well. Um, President Stephen and I did an interview not too long ago about Dracul and Psycholia, and I am excited to hear their take on this, especially because I know they have started a micro improvement podcast recently. Um, Talking about why micronations should develop and how they should develop, is it important for a nation to develop based around the support from their community, or is it okay for a nation to develop solely off of benefits of uh, I guess a sponsor, a larger corporate sponsor? And I think in doing that and asking this question, kind of trying to dig a little deeper into that, I hope that the micronational community can come to like baseline standards, even if it's not something where we all agree on the same thing, because of course it's not going to be. This defines, like, at very least some polarization in opinion. I think that it is necessary that we try to figure it out, because uh, when people come into this community, it is confusing enough to hear about what everybody's doing and how everybody's trying to stake their claim and prove themselves as legitimate. But if those people come in and get attracted by a potentially powerful or resource heavy group, and it ends up becoming a problem or making micronationalism look bad to a certain extent, then it could be a very alarming thing where people say, I don't want to do a lot with micronationalism because those are the people who, scam people or whatever. Those are the people who do this or that. So I think as micronations develop and as they become more powerful, it's important to watch those things and to make sure that we're all doing things while observing each other's actions. Steven said, I feel micronations should organically grow, whether it's with the community or not. A lot of micronations feel Slowjamastan has risen to claim because of their wealth and celeb status only. I completely agree, and I think it's it's a hard take. Like, I just feel like we shouldn't embrace it so hard, If they're going to push all the media attention, if it's going to be something that is um, very pronounced anyway, I think that the community just wholeheartedly accepting them right away makes it to where then there is a certain like status or place. Glad you're back. Tiffany just walked in from her friend's house and she's about to make a phone call, but I wanted to say hi to her. Thank you guys for liking, by the way. Liking the video definitely helps a lot, and it helps spread it out. I think for us, there is that big concern though, where we don't know exactly what it is that that makes something a micronation, and there's no like clear, concrete answer for that because everybody's going to feel differently. But I will say there are standards that Aeternia, over the years that I've been working with it and have been developing it, uh, I have seen work and don't work. I have made a lot of personal failures in developing Aeternia. Things that, I feel like would have worked better during this time or that time, or where I feel like I didn't do enough in certain aspects, or where I didn't understand enough to really be handling some of the things that I was attempting to. But in doing all of that, you learn sort of what makes a micronation that's going to connect well to yours. And that's where I feel like a lot of opinions on Slowjamastan and on wealth and micronations are going to come in. Because there can certainly be micronations that develop completely organically and end up being really dangerous things as well. But regardless of that, we simply have to be able to view them with an understanding of how we want to see micronationalism develop, and then on top of that, with how well they are actually meshing with the overall consensus that the community has about what it should be. Steven says, lots of people put their blood, sweat, and tears into building their nations and developing a positive image. It feels insulting to many when someone says I have money now, my 4-month-old micronation is famous. Agreed. I completely agree. And I think it's even more difficult because that's such a weird take to have. Like, it's certainly valid, and it's one that I subscribe to. But I think we also have to understand some of the confusing logic that could present as an argument. For example, what about a micronation that is specifically doing it for quote unquote a good cause, whatever that cause is? Let's say, it's like I don't want to say like the World Health Organization. What if it's oh goodness, like an animal rights group, right? Like if this wouldn't be a good example again because I feel like people have a negative opinion of them, but like, okay, no, I have a good one. St. Jude's Hospital, like cancer fighting, like children's hospital. What if St. Jude's was like, we're creating a country and we're backing it specifically to raise awareness about childhood cancer? I don't know how that would work. I don't know how successful it would be, but let's say it was, right? That's something that does have like a private sponsor and a backer and could become incredibly famous like overnight because they're like the right to be able to survive childhood cancer is like an important thing, and so we have to be able to get countries to recognize that, otherwise we're like our own thing. However they decided to pitch that, I think it would be wild to then say, well, no, we can't let St. Jude because they're corporate scum or whatever, right? Like, we can't have that hard an opinion on it. But at the same time, that does enter the same territory where, what's the difference between Elon Musk doing it and St. Jude's? What's the difference between, a radio host doing it and a a guy in Nevada, a guy who did this from his childhood in Nevada? It's a fine line. Like, and I think the more micronations that develop, the more successes and failures that we see that are like big time over the top things, the more we're going to start to like refine our palate for what feels good as a micronation. Steven says, I could get behind that cause. And then he said, but nobody knows why Slowjamastan has been made. No clause is announced. I completely agree. The only thing that I've been able to see in a lot of Slowjamastan's development is specifically around, wanting to connect to tourism. Very similarly to Molossia, they, I'm sure, will have tours and things. They've already had at least one event on their land to try to pull that in. But it certainly does seem like it could be just 100% about profit. Somebody saying, hey, I'm essentially going to make like just an amusement park, like, like a Six Flags or whatever, but micronation themed. And isn't that wacky? Come check out my thing. Or it could be, and we're using all that money to create free housing, or we're using all that money to develop, a hospital or a school or something. Um, Vistern says PewDiePie could also straight up make a micronation and become a meme, plus micronation becoming popular in less than a week. Vistern says right. Excuse me. Steven says right, and that's a great question as well. How, even if the person has like a good image, is there something morally wrong about doing that? Even if that person is like a good person, right? Because if PewDiePie did it, people love PewDiePie. I'm sure PewDiePie has come under controversy for something at some point, but I think the general consensus on who PewDiePie is like very positive. So if he were to start a micronation, people may not see anything wrong with that because they're like, oh, we know him and we love him. Like, why should that be an issue? But if you view micronationalism as taking care of people and like putting someone's lives in your hand and like the trust of their like social development and financial development in your hands, then it does seem like it. Because then it's like, oh, PewDiePie doesn't have like experience in running countries, but he does make a lot of money, so he could like give people a lot of stuff, and the following would like allow him to like hire people. There are a lot of pros and cons to consider. So, if somebody wealthy and successful and powerful comes in from outside, is it about their qualifications? Is it about the amount of financing they're putting into it? Is it about their social status? What are the things that make it right or wrong for somebody to start a country? Aeternia says, TBH, Aeternia gained popularity by pulling a meme move. There you go. And see, but that's something that is still kind of grassroots. Like, also, what about just internal to the community, right? If somebody makes one video, like if somebody went to Microcon and filmed one video, but they were not a micronation before that, they film a video, they put it up on their personal channel, it all of a sudden gets like 50 million views. Like it just absolutely, starts, it's trending. Like it's just going. That being the case, if that person then says, now I'm starting a micronation, and then micronation becomes the most famous one, is that wrong or is that right? Because they may not have any connection to the community beforehand, they may not care about the community, but they still have that success and they're still grassroots. So what are the qualifying characteristics of a nation? Steven says, I think a micronation should always be made from some sort of cause, stance, or belief, not just made because you can. Those ones typically fall without reason. I completely agree. That's a great point. I would say that if you start a micronation, you should definitely start it with a purpose. But I've also seen micronations who are started with what seem like very good purposes that also fall in just the same way. Like, I feel like a certain amount of micronational success is certainly about cause, but I've seen some great causes fall in micronationalism because there's an issue with financing, because there's an issue with branding, because there's an issue with just being a grassroots movement and keeping that alive. And so, yeah, I don't know. If somebody has like a good idea, but they come in with a lot of money, is that the thing? Like, there are so many questions. Um, Aeternia says, to my honest opinion, PewDiePie would make a bad image for the micronational community. Steven says, yes, he probably would. I'm curious as to what the thought process on that is. Aeternia says, we've been a micronation since 2016. Very cool. Steven says, typically the ones who fall without good cause is because of finances or dedication. And then he said, yes. And then Vistern said, a man named Vladimir might be fighting someone also called Vladimir in a country whose president is Vladimir. Yeah. You talk about the Ukraine thing, but you're making a meme. About what Steven just brought up, that is like an important question though. If someone who is wealthy and successful can start a successful nation and maintain it, how much credit do they get for that? Is the big issue there. If a person starts a country, like I think the concern for me is baggage like comes along with it as well, or at least one of the concerns. If you're a really successful person, but you're known for like the wrong things, would you be bad for doing that? Even if your micronation had like a good purpose and like ended up helping people, uh, if you then take credit for it as bad, like if like Bill Cosby started a micronation, right? It'd be like, oh, it's Bill Cosby, but like it did end up feeding like over 10,000 families or whatever, and have like brought over 2,000 people out of poverty and into housing and whatever. Like there could be something that is really advantageous that comes from somebody really bad, and that would be concerning. But just in the same manner, you could always have a situation where somebody wonderful comes in, and somebody who is really adored, and then all of a sudden, like tanks it really hard, or like a public scandal comes out, and then that like messes with their nation. Like Steven said, I think having a cause is certainly very important. Uh, Being someone who, at very least, either has a blank slate and nobody really knows them, or is somebody who has some kind of positive credibility, is helpful in that. But then, even more so, there is the question of just structure. Is it better for something to exist that is successful, that you know will be successful for whatever it is? Or is it better for there to be plenty of ideas and good ideas, but most of them not ever function because they don't have enough resources? Um, Aristoria says, our reason to preserve human rights and give better life. Agreed. That sounds wonderful. And you see, that's like a perfectly justifiable reason for starting a nation. I think that it is difficult though to make that pitch to people because a lot of the time, the highest. Oh no, Steven's memeing. Oh goodness. Steven said, if Bill Cosby started a micronation, all the women would become unconscious and we'd have to arrest them again. Goodness, the water in the micronation would be tainted. That's awful. Um, I just feel like it's a situation where the founder of a micronation is very important, and where the money that a micronation develops with is very important, and the purpose of a micronation, as Steven said, is very important. But even still, what makes a community genuine versus ingenuine is up to that community. And if we're ready to receive with open arms anybody who can give us the opportunity to make more money or the opportunity to expand the cultural effect of micronationalism, we may sell our souls a little bit. But at the same time, if we are too closed off to change, we may never be able to grow past um, the stage that we're in. And micronationalism could eventually go into a decline. It's a hard stance to take. It really is, and everybody has to make their own individual decision about that. For Aristoria, talking about our purpose is to benefit life and to improve on people's freedoms. A lot of the time, our home country, our home macronation, is the thing that we think of as like being penultimate in freedom. Not everyone, certainly. Some people actively want to escape their home country and want to find a better place to live. But a lot of the time, we think of macronations as a leading example of human rights and of progress and of social and economic development. So I think for the general person in a population saying, hey, we're going to improve your life and give you more money and make you happier and improve your freedoms, they may find that hard to believe, and it certainly is something that's very hard to prove. So as you continue to develop your nations, think about that. If am I doing this for the right reasons? Am I able to market that correctly? Am I able to pull all of that into a genuine community? And what is the ultimate value of reaching your end goal? And is it worth potentially changing what it is that your initial intentions are? Steven said, like that one micronation we spoke about before the interview. What was its name? They scam people. We have to watch from a distance for a while. Uh, New ones developed before accepting. Um, a nation that scams you. I'm trying to think of which one you're referring to specifically. We did talk about a number of nations. Oh, the Kingdom of Germany or whatever. Yeah, the Kingdom of Germany seemed like a very sketchy thing. We watched a Vice article actively on the channel. We ended up having it shut down by Vice. They like actively were stopping our stream while we were live and making it hard for us to watch it. But we watched a Vice video many streams back about a kingdom, a micronation called New Germany in Germany. And it was run by this guy who uh, he was like a local politician. He ran for like mayor and stuff a few times and lost. And then he started selling like this insurance based around his micronation. And all of these people started living there and working there based off of the funds from this insurance. But the insurance was like concerning. The police like raided their compound several times because there were like issues with like fraud occurring with that. They had stuff set up where like the government was like investigating them for like running an illegal bank and stuff. It was just a very concerning thing and was very volatile for all the people who, if anyone did, actually like depend on that for their life. And it's a very concerning thing to watch in micronationalism that can give a nation a bad name. If we call ourselves micronation and the Kingdom of New Germany calls themselves a micronation, people could understandably get confused as to what your purpose is and how you're trying to develop. And you have to be careful that you don't become like that, because maybe that person had great intentions to begin with. Surely, if there are people who came there to live, of course, the financial security would be a big plus and would be a big seller. But at the same time, they probably were told something to give themselves a belief that this would work out for them, that they would, sacrifice and risk a lot of things in their life in order to make sure that they could contribute, because they felt like it would better them in some extent. So I don't think all those people were idiots. They had to have been told something that was effectively convincing, or shown something that was effectively convincing. And so, that being the case, knowing that we haven't heard about the Kingdom of New Germany in a long time, I believe because there was some sort of thing that shut them down, um, you have to think, could my micronation become that? What are the guidelines for a micronation being the right thing or the wrong thing? And what validates a micronation? Steven says, I think it was the other one. They said they give you the land. Their colors are yellow, I believe. Liberland, yes, Liberland. We also have talked about stuff with Liberland. I am curious. So you were saying like they scam people. I think you told me a little bit about that. I didn't know too much about Liberland. I am surprised that Liberland, if they are legitimate, isn't more successful than they have been, because they have a lot of media presence, but like their YouTube just isn't popping off, and I'm surprised by that. The land thing I think we talked about a little bit, which certainly seems sketchy. I know they got arrested before for trying to like land in their the territory or whatever, where the governments of like both of those nations, even though they have some sort of dispute around that territory, are both like, but it's not yours, and will both actively stop you from trying to claim that it's yours. It seems weird. Like they got arrested, that was a part of their big hype. But then you haven't heard too much out of Liberland in the last few years, right? Why Liberland became really popular in like 2010? Why is it now 10 years later and there's not more hype around it? What's going on? Steven said, all right, what I missed. Steven, thank you so much for joining us. Steven Vince, not Steven Luke. It's good to see you. Master Steven of the House of Treasure here with us tonight. Steven, please hit me up through text if you can. I want to hit you up. We are going to Microcon, and I want to talk to you about Microcon. We're also purchasing land at the end of this month. There's a lot of crazy stuff happening, and I want to catch you up on it. If you want to come to Microcon in Las Vegas with us, let me know, because we can get you tickets, we can get stuff set up. We're still trying to figure out the logistics of it ourselves exactly, but I want to have our group that goes be as big as possible, to be able to make as deep an impact as we can. Especially because you and I don't get to hang out as often as we would like. Last time our trip was really cool, and so I would be excited to have another grand adventure. Renewed Republic says, in my opinion, I avoid dishonesty. So I would say things like, I wouldn't say things like, I'll give you land and stuff. Agreed. perfectly reasonable. Hey, also I saw you message me. Thank you, Steven. That means a lot. Fake name says Cosneria is here, or Cosneria is here. Also, AP, did you see my email? Ooh, I don't think I did. I'll have to double check and make sure that I can do it on the set. I don't know. The thing that I'm trying to figure out with all of this is that when we connect with nations like that, because I don't know anything about uh, um, Slowjamastan, and I think that's the ultimate question that everybody has here. It's kind of just a black box. It's kind of just something that's there, but we don't know really a ton about what's inside or what makes it up. So that being the case, when we interact with nations that we don't know a ton about, of course you have to try and learn about them. But how should we take what we do know? You know, do we treat uh, do we treat Slowjamastan as a nation that is legitimately trying to develop infrastructure for its people and a safe place to live and develop technology that makes their quality of life improve, to be able to create more stability for them economically? Are we taking them that seriously, or are we saying, hey, it's good to meet you, yeah, what's going on, how are you, oh, that's cool, you guys are doing some stuff, I'll follow you on Twitter or whatever. Like, what's the extent that we approach those nations? Also, can that have an impact on other nations may see that negatively, because if they feel like they're infringing on their ability to get um, their their community developed, you could make some people sour about that. Serene Republic of Vales says, hello, the most Serene Republic of Vales is here with the Doge. Hey, it's good to see you, Vales. Thank you for joining us. Aristorius says, what's your email again, AP? It's aeternianempire@gmail.com. aeternianempire@gmail.com. No spaces, no caps, just all together. You should also be able to find that on the About section of our YouTube channel page, or you should be able to get that from our website, wix.com backslash Aeternia Imperial Market, all that. You can Google it, is there. I'm forgetting the exact URL because it's been so long since I streamed. Dan says, greeting, Your Imperial Majesty. Greeting, Dan. How are you? Yeah, I feel real concerned about this development for micronationalism. I want to hear what Stephen had to say. Stephen Luke had to say about Liberland and sort of it being corrupt or it being a scam. I feel like that's the biggest concern right now, is that, like, nations can turn into that. Nations can turn worse than that, certainly, depending on how successful they get. And so there is no way for any of us to 100% know the mind of someone else. There is no way for us to confirm for the future this project that I'm supporting will never go off the rails and will never become something it wasn't intended to. That can happen with anything. But we have to be able to start to define what red flags are and what green flags are for that. I think one of the biggest things that we should try to focus on is the connection to other nations. How well does that group actually ingratiate themselves into the community? One of the biggest things that I've found in talking to other micronations is that it is super important how their friends and allies and the people who have talked to them, even their enemies in micronationalism, view them. Because a great example is with Sycoldia and with Dracul. Sycoldia and Dracul were very close nations for a long time. Even during this most recent activity between them, there was still praise talked on both ends. Like, if you see, which I'm actually actively finishing the edit for Christina's video. I finished it tonight. It's processing. It's doing its exporting right now, and then I'm going to upload it, but it's like an hour and a half long, so it's probably going to take all night to upload. Maybe up tomorrow. Should definitely be up by the end of the week. But the purpose of saying all that is just to say that if you watch their interviews and if you are trying to determine what your opinion of Dracul or Psycholdi is from those interviews, you're probably going to hear some good things. And not probably, you're certainly going to hear some good things. Just because of the fact that you, as a micronation, really don't want to like lie about your other nations because they have information about you too, and then it becomes a big dramatic mess. But as well, it's easy to see when somebody is genuine about what they're doing and is trying to pursue it in earnest, especially when you're making agreements with that other group. If something doesn't start working out or if something's fishy, you can figure it out pretty quickly. And then when people ask you about that nation, you can give your opinion. So as we continue to grow, as we continue to develop as micronations, it's very important for us to learn about how well other nations are ingratiated into the community, how well they are able to hold their own as a legitimate figure in micronationalism. That doesn't mean in popularity either. That just means in stability. There are some micronations that I've seen that are on the right track 100% who are very small. There are other nations that I've seen who are very popular who seem to be all over the place or seem to be doing very, very little at all as far as their actual progress and development. So keep that in mind and know that there may be differences between what the value of a micronation to other micronations is versus what the most popular or most well-received micronation is by the general public. And that's something that we all have to investigate for ourselves as micronationalists. Fake says, can I cut out the middleman and spare you the email and ask your opinion on my ideas here? If you want to, but I feel like that's not super reasonable just because I can talk to you about it, but I still won't be able to finalize any document until we would be able to sit down and talk about terms. As well, I'm probably not going to be able to think about all the things I would need to figure out in order to make that work. Like if we're talking about a legitimate economic agreement, we would need to like hash out some details and figure out how everything would work, especially because now Aeternia, as connected to the state of Alabama, is an LLC. So we do have to make sure that like if there is some like trading going on or if there's like any work that's being done, we have to document that correctly. And we have to make sure that contracts are signed, make sure that it's something that's set up reasonably. So an economic agreement is something I'm very interested in, and I would love to hear your opinions. But I feel like if we can talk on Discord or on email, it's better for me because I can respond when I have time, but more so, it allows us to go back and forth, or even set up like a time to talk privately so that we can establish those details further without me having to try and make quick split-second decisions on stream. Dan says, we're doing very well here. I'm glad to see that, Dan, and I'm excited to hear more about it. Vale says, how are you, Emperor AP? Thank you so much for asking. Hey, this is the first hit up of the stream. I am doing very well. Again, things are a little concerning right now because we have our land purchase coming up. We within the next like week or two are going to be in the final stages of getting sending all of the money and getting the deeds. So this is a little bit nerve-wracking for me. Again, I'm pretty much just cashing out to try and do this, but it's a wonderful opportunity for us, and it's something that I can use as a lot of long-term stability for myself, for my dad who's getting older and who needs to retire already but doesn't have the financial means to, and even more so if he is put in a debilitating position medically could stop him from being able to survive on his own. So our ability to purchase this land is really crucial right now. And as we continue to develop and as we continue to move forward, is going to do a lot for our savings in the long run because we're not having to spend all this money on rent. If you guys are interested in helping, again, ko-fi.com/Aeternia. We've been trying to promote that a little bit. We have some commissions that we're doing about Microcon and about our land that we have started to add more and more. So if you guys are interested in working with us, creating economic pacts with us, developing, or even just seeing the updates on our land purchase, ko-fi.com/Aeternia, or check out our website. I keep running circles on the money and the development of micronations topics simply because I want to move forward and I want to come to like a concrete answer on this stream, but there is no way for me to feasibly do that. I'm more or less pitching to you guys and asking for your opinions because oh man, it's this is something that I've known as a development in micronationalism for a while, but it's different to see it starting to bubble up more quickly and to be trying to learn about what that means. Aristoria says, we sent you an email, AP. Thank you so much, Aristoria. That means a lot, and I am eager to read it and to learn more about the future of our nations. Um, Dan says, we're doing very well here in the Imperial Principality of Marina. Marinia. That's wonderful. I'm glad to see that, Dan, and I can't wait to see the development of Marinia. The Kingdom of Adam said, Heart, we got you. We appreciate you, Kingdom of Adam. Serene Republic says, that's great. Best wishes to all. Thank you so much. Again, an incredibly exciting opportunity for us. It is just um, a sincere obstacle that we are having to overcome. But at the end of the day, I am super lucky to be in the position to be able to do that, and I feel like it's going to allow us a significant amount as far as how frequently we can get work done. Of course, it will allow us a lot more ability to expand ourselves, getting that land, and to develop our projects more thoroughly, but also it allows us a point of connection between us and our local citizens to start regularly completing projects without us all having to figure out a time where we can meet together to do a thing. This will be like a common ground for us all, and I hope that that becomes more and more frequent as we continue. Let me go on. Fake name says it's just ideas, not even economic. Ooh, wait, but hold up. Let me go back. Cusnaria, was it you who asked about a... Somebody asked about creating an agreement with us. An economic alliance. Aristoria, it was you bringing up an economic alliance. So, oh wait, no. Fake name said his idea is not even economic. Okay, so talking about different things. Aristoria, please email me for that. I saw you. I saw you said you emailed me. That's great. I will hit up that. Sorry, fake name for your thing. I definitely want to talk about the ideas. I might, if you have already sent me an email, I think I might have responded to it already. Because I know I did get an email from somebody talking about a lot of ideas, and I believe I responded to it. If you've already sent me an email, let me know, and I will like go back and double check, and I'll send like just another like follow up email. If not, please do email me the ideas. Yeah, and I appreciate it. As well, if President Luke is still on, I would say I definitely love to talk about the future of Aeternia and Drukul, because I know that, again, we're trying to continue our land purchase, but it's something that at this point we've had difficulty trying to figure out what the best way to market that to the micronational community is. And because we've been had this opportunity kind of brought to us, we're now trying to learn about the different benefits and uses that micronations would have for connection to that land, whether that's using that land itself, or whether that is having the benefit of us developing that land and then making trade connections or something like that. Again, all very exciting things to talk about, but certainly requiring a lot of planning and dedication. I'm starting to get off topic now, so I think I'm probably going to head off stream, but I am lucky for everybody who showed out tonight. Thank you so much for participating, and please share this video on Twitter if you can, share it on Instagram, wherever, Facebook. I want to try and reach out to those nations like Slowjamastan and like Beer to Will to know more about their opinions. I want to hear more about this topic, and I feel like it's something that we as a community have to keep an open discussion on, so that we know whether or not how to improve our own standards and methods for determining or evaluating other micronations. So thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate your time. I'm Emperor AP, and I will see you next time with more progress. One thing before I leave. I did make more progress already on our beta version of our Aeternian dwelling. I had been trying to work on that for some time over the last like 3 days now. I have shown you guys 2 days progress so far, and now I'm going to show you the third day's progress that I did for a little while today. It wasn't very much because it started raining, but we now have that hole to about this level. I wanna send pictures and stuff, and I'm gonna do that to our Ko-Fi as well. So if you follow our Ko-Fi or Instagram or whatever, you'll probably see that there. But yeah, it's getting pretty high up. Once we get it to like 6 or 7 feet, to where it's over my head, certainly, that's when I want to start like putting a roof on it and making it more stable. And again, that's just a beta version to look at what an Aeternian dwelling could look like to make it easier for us to plan once we get out there and we have a crew out there. How we want to start setting up most quickly and what's going to allow us the most opportunity to create something stable and then to advance that and modify that without having to destroy and rebuild the entire structure. Vels says, have a good night all. Dodge Devin the first and Vels. Hey, good to see you, Veles or Vels. I am glad to have you in the stream, and I hope you have a good night. Jose Moreno said, what's up? What's up, Jose? It's good to see you. We just spent a whole hour and a half talking all about what the morality is of a micronation being started by someone who's wealthy or even being started by a corporation. And how you determine the value of a micronation and stuff. We've been getting into some pretty heavy topics here. Jose, if you want to check that out, I do suggest you go back and watch the stream. We had a good bit of juicy stuff in there. We talked about different micronations. We talked about Slowjamastan, we talked about Liberland, we talked about the Kingdom of New Germany, we talked about Molossia, West Arctica. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that and my opinions on it, please check out that. But as well, if you want to continue to follow those updates like we were just talking about with our development of our land purchase and with trying to create the preparations for all of the work that we'll need to do there, please let me know and please check out our Ko-Fi for that. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you next time. Peace, everybody. Good night.